They say some heroes wield swords. His only weapon was a question. When Socrates was born in a modest Athenian home, no one imagined he would turn thinking itself into a battlefield. An awkward child of a stonemason and midwife, destined to become the midwife of ideas. Athens around him glittered with marble temples and proud warriors. But beneath the festivals and speeches, something else stirred: doubt. As a boy, Socrates watched processions and victories, sensing questions behind every triumph. The city taught him to admire glory. Life taught him to suspect it. He fought as a hoplite, armor heavy, breath short, dust in his lungs. On the battlefield, he proved unnervingly calm. He saved men stronger than himself, not by muscle, but by refusing to panic. Courage, he realized, was not loud. It was clarity when everyone else was afraid. Years later, a strange rumor reached him. At Delphi, the oracle had been asked if anyone was wiser than Socrates. "The god says, 'No one,'" came the reply. He heard it not as praise, but as a challenge. If he was wisest, it meant only this: he knew he did not know. So he went to test the oracle. He visited politicians, poets, craftsmen, men called wise by the city. He asked gentle questions that quietly cut to the bone. The more they spoke, the clearer it became. They thought they knew. He knew that he did not. He owned no school, charged no fees, wrote no books. His classroom was the dust of the marketplace, the shade of colonnades. He stopped strangers mid-errand and asked, "What is justice? What is courage? What is a good life?" Answers crumbled. Questions remained. Some laughed and called him a harmless eccentric. Others felt something more dangerous under his jokes. He did not insult them. He simply led their thoughts to a cliff edge and let silence finish the work. Mockery turned to irritation. Irritation grew into hatred. Yet where elders fumed, the young were fascinated. Alcibiades, Plato, Xenophon, restless minds drawn like sparks to dry tinder. They followed him from square to square, scribbling notes in memory, if not on paper. Athens saw a circle of youth around an old man. The city whispered, "He is corrupting them." Around them, Athens bled. The Peloponnesian War dragged on, draining silver and sons. Demagogues shouted in the assembly, promising victory with each new vote. Socrates watched speeches rise and fall like waves, all sound, little wisdom. He began to look less like a harmless questioner, more like an accusation in human form. When oligarchs briefly seized power, they summoned him. The 30 tyrants ordered Socrates to help arrest an innocent man, obey, or risk his own life. He refused. For him, a corrupt city was less terrifying than a corrupted soul. What he did that day was quietly heroic. What he did every day was loudly inconvenient. He compared himself to a gadfly's sting on the lazy horse that was Athens. Without the sting, the city would sleep. With it, the city might wake, or swat. As peace faltered and pride smarted, the city looked for scapegoats. Sophists were blamed for twisting words, foreigners for strange gods. And in the middle stood Socrates, asking if anyone truly understood the words justice or piety they hurled about. His questions now sounded to many like treason. Then came the formal charges. Not believing in the gods of the city, introducing new divine things, corrupting the youth. To some, it was law in action. To others, it was fear dressed in legal robes. The names of his accusers were known: Miletus, Anytus, Lycon, men of law, trade, and oratory. But behind them stood something larger, a wounded city, tired of being questioned. It wanted certainty, not mirrors. It chose to put the mirror on trial. On the day of the trial, the Heliaia court buzzed like a hive. Hundreds of jurors, citizens holding bronze voting discs, onlookers murmuring. Some expected a broken old man begging for mercy. Instead, Socrates walked in barefoot, unhurried, as if arriving for another conversation in the marketplace.
He did not flatter. He did not rehearse tears. He spoke as he always had, plainly, stubbornly.
"I cannot stop philosophizing," he told them. "To do so would be to disobey the god." He cross-examined his accusers in public, like any other day in the agora. "Who improves the youth?" he asked Meletus. "The laws," came the answer. "And who knows the laws?" With each reply, the accusation unraveled, thread by thread. He could have appealed to pity, brought his children, begged for their future. Instead, he refused to manipulate the jury's tears. "I am not a tragic actor," he said. "If Athens wanted his silence, it would have to demand it honestly." Then the voting discs were cast. Bronze clinked against bronze. Guilty. By a narrow margin, Athens chose to condemn the man who had spent his life questioning it. The city's verdict fell heavier than any stone. According to law, the condemned could propose his own penalty. He could have asked for exile. Instead, he half smiled and suggested free meals in the Prytaneum, the honor given to Olympic champions. It was a joke and a judgment. The jury heard mostly the joke. Enraged, more jurors now voted for death than had voted for guilt. The penalty? To drink hemlock. No spectacle, no sword, no flames, just a cup. A simple, quiet way to remove a noisy conscience from the city's ear. His friends were shattered. They had believed in philosophy, not in its ability to kill. Some planned escape, bribery, a boat waiting beyond the city walls. They offered him life at the price of his own laws. He listened and shook his head. In the dialogue later called Crito, they argued, "Is it ever right to break the laws that raised you?" Socrates imagined the laws of Athens speaking with one voice. "Will you destroy us because we wronged you?" He chose to obey even unjust law, rather than teach others to trample it. Days passed. His cell became a classroom. They spoke of the soul, of whether death was sleep or journey. If the body is a prison, he asked, why fear its unlocking? For him, philosophy had always been a rehearsal for dying well. On the final morning, Athens woke to ordinary sounds: roosters, carts, distant debate. Inside the prison, time thickened. Socrates bathed so his friends would not have to cleanse his body. He joked lightly, as if preparing for a journey rather than an execution. His family visited. Tensions, embraces, words too private for history to hold. When they left, he turned again to his students. No crown, no robes, no marble throne. Just an old man on a simple bed, turning death into the last chapter of a lesson on how to live. They spoke of immortality, not of statues, but of the soul. If death is a dreamless sleep, he said, then it is no evil. If it is a journey where just men meet, it is a gain. In both cases, fear dissolves. What remains is how you chose to live before it. At last, the jailer entered with the cup. He had carried death to many men before. This time, his hands shook. Socrates took the cup without drama, without ceremony. He did not curse the city. He thanked the man. He raised the hemlock like a final toast. "Let us sacrifice a cock to Asclepius," he would later say, as if death were a healing. He drank steadily, without flinch or pause. For a moment, the room held its breath with him. He walked until his legs grew heavy, then lay down as instructed. The poison crept upward, cold replacing warmth. Plato would later write that Socrates felt the numbness climbing like a shadow. Even as his body failed, his voice reached for clarity. "Care for your souls," he urged them.
When his chest finally stilled, there was no thunder, no omen, just a silence that felt too large for the room that held it. His friends wept, some openly, some into their cloaks. Athens had killed a citizen. Philosophy had gained a martyr. Outside, the city went on, markets, debates, small scandals. But slowly, regret seeped into its stones. Stories spread of the trial, the calm, the cup. Years later, Athens would condemn his accusers instead. Too late for the man, not too late for the lesson. Socrates himself left no writings. His words survived as echoes in the minds of his students. Plato shaped dialogues where his teachers still walked and questioned. Xenophon preserved another image, simpler, more practical. Between them, a dead man kept talking to the future. From Plato came Aristotle. From Aristotle, schools and libraries across the Mediterranean. Questions first sharpened in Athenian dust became foundations of logic, science, ethics. The gadfly's sting had turned into an entire hive of thought buzzing through centuries. Later ages argued about him. Stoics saw a model of inner freedom. Christians glimpsed a pagan who died for truth. Skeptics admired his doubt more than his conclusions. Everyone, it seemed, wanted a piece of the man who claimed to know nothing. In medieval monasteries, his name survived in fragile manuscripts. In Renaissance cities, painters and humanists revived his face and questions. Printing presses multiplied his trial into thousands of copies. A conversation begun in one small court now echoed in dozens of languages. Modern lecture halls still stage his trial. Students played jurors, philosophers, accusers. Each generation must decide again. Was he a danger to the city, or its only real friend? The verdict keeps changing. The questions do not. We now speak of Socratic dialogue, Socratic irony, Socratic method. His name slipped from a person into a way of asking, a style of teaching. Not answers handed down from on high, but a guided walk into one's own confusion and out the other side. To some, he remains an irritating skeptic who undermined tradition. To others, a moral hero who chose death over compromise. To a few, he is dangerous, proof that too many questions can tear a city apart. A single figure refracted through the fears and hopes of those who judge him. Look closer, and another picture appears. A poor man who never stopped talking, a soldier who faced death twice, once from enemies, once from his own city. A citizen who chose to obey a verdict he believed unjust, so that his life and teaching would not contradict each other. Athens gave him much: language, law, the theater of public life. It also killed him. Yet without its democracy, he could never have stood in public and torn arguments apart. The same city that silenced him had first given him the stage and the audience. He once said that the unexamined life is not worth living. He paid for that sentence with his own. But he left behind a more dangerous idea, that no law, no custom, no God should be beyond patient, persistent questioning, not even the ones we love. Since his day, every power has had to fear a new kind of opponent, not a rebel with weapons, a citizen with questions, a man or woman who sits in a meeting, a courtroom, a classroom, and quietly asks, "Are we sure this is just?" He did not build an empire,
lead an army, or rule a state. He walked, talked, and listened. He turned everyday conversations into tools sharp enough to slice through self-deception. In a world of loud certainties, he chose the quiet violence of a well-placed why. Socrates did not merely die for philosophy. He turned a lifetime of questions into one final answer. A poor Athenian who owned nothing, not even his own fate at the end. He entered history as an annoying old man in the marketplace. He left it as the conscience of thinking itself.